So here's a pretty surprising story. Bernie Sanders saying that he is not comfortable with Twitter's Trump ban. If you guys remember in the aftermath, and really it ended up being the stuff that he was tweeting afterwards. But after the whole attempted Capitol insurrection thing on January 6th, Donald Trump, it was clear from reports, especially, that he was enjoying this. He was hoping it would happen. He was, going through measures to make sure it wasn't stopped. He was enjoying it. He was laughing about it, really excited. But then he was also tweeting these like really cryptic tweets that were basically supporting what they did. He was doing like this weird double speak stuff where he was on the one hand trying to pseudo fake way condemn them, but in reality he's calling them freedom fighters and all that yada yada stuff. And so he got banned. Not only did he get banned from Twitter, he got banned from literally everywhere. But Bernie Sanders coming out saying he's actually not comfortable with it. So Senator Bernie Sanders says in a newly published podcast interview that he does not, quote, feel particularly comfortable with Twitter's permanent ban on former President Trump. He appeared on Ezra Klein Show, and he was asked to discuss the state of the Democratic Party and was asked about criticisms from conservative figures that liberals had become, quote, too censorious and, quote, too willing to censor others. Look, you have a former President Trump who is a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, a xenophobe, a pathological liar, an authoritarian, somebody who doesn't believe in the rule of law. This is a bad news guy. But if you're asking me, do I feel particularly comfortable that the president, the then president of the United States, could not express his views on Twitter, I don't feel comfortable about it. However, Sanders maintained that internet platforms should not allow for, quote, hate speech and conspiracy theories to spread out across the country or be used for, quote, authoritarian purposes and insurrection. So how do you balance that? I don't know. But it is an issue that we have got to be thinking about. Because if anybody who thinks yesterday it was Donald Trump who was banned, and tomorrow it could be somebody else who has a very different point of view, Sanders added. The Vermont senator said he also did not like, quote, giving that much power to a handful of high-tech people. So that's pretty interesting comments, of course. Essentially, I mean, this is a common view. It's a view, the overall view that Bernie is saying here, I pretty much agree with almost entirely. I would definitely say that, I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily, quote-unquote, uncomfortable with him being banned on Twitter. But in terms of his concerns about, too much power being concentrated among a few in the tech sphere and these tech CEOs basically getting to control all this stuff, and hey, how do you balance, banning conspiracy theories or outright lies, because then you're giving power to these tech companies, these tech giants, and it becomes this really, really difficult, seriously difficult balance. Trump was clearly inciting violence, and then you say, okay, does it meet like the Brandenburg, bar and all this stuff, and does it meet the legal requirements? Twitter is not, it's not a government agency, so, it has its own private rules that it can enforce, and there's all these different legal jargon, and then there's the slippery slope argument and all of this stuff. And so, my main concern would definitely be, because I definitely believe that there's a lot of dangerous stuff on social media, which is just outright fake news, outright lies, straight up conspiracy theories, things of that nature, where it's like, yeah, those people should immediately be banned, posts should be removed, but the problem with that becomes the slippery slope stuff, and hey, is big tech getting too powerful, which I definitely think is a legitimate concern. And so I think Bernie here is essentially just sort of voicing that skepticism or worry about how delicate of a balance this is between making sure that we don't have, these tech giants that have too much power who are determining everything, but also like, hey, outright lies, fake news, conspiracies about like Bill Gates wanting to, you'll see articles all the time on Facebook that are fake about Bill Gates making a comment that he didn't, and just outright false stuff. How do you deal with that? It's a really interesting question. It's a difficult one to answer, to be quite frank with you. I'm okay with Trump being banned on Twitter. I think that it was, he did violate not only their terms of service, but also potentially in a legal sense as well. Although it's hard to prove that in court for sure, obviously. Anytime we're talking about First Amendment violations, it's ridiculously difficult to actually prove that in court. So that'll be a tough one for sure. But we'd have to see exactly what it is. But I don't personally mind. But in terms of being afraid of, okay, slippery slope argument and tech giants being too powerful, I definitely understand.